Hello everybody, Shrouded hand here. Regular viewers to this channel will know that I've already proven the existence of the Michelin Man, space clowns and the infinite toilet dimension, so now it's time to put Santa deniers in their place. I've always found the idea of Santa a strange and fascinating one. Although he's very much associated with a religious festival, these days he's not really a religious figure. He's more like a fairy tale, yet adults spend an inordinate amount of time instilling a belief in Santa Claus in their own children. Those children eventually grow up, learn Santa isn't real, but they continue the cycle by instilling Santa belief in the next generation of children. It's a strange and illogical tradition that millions of people engage in all over the world. So why does this character have such sticking power? It's almost as if on an instinctual level we know that there's something there. It sort of tickles that reptilian part of our brain, those Jungian ancestral memories. The legend of Santa Claus runs deeper than just a cute story that we tell to kids. There's a reason why we continue this ritual year after year. It resonates with us on some primal level. The origins of Santa are pretty hard to pin down. Obviously St. Nicholas is the primary source, but very little is known about the actual St. Nicholas. We know that he was a bishop in the 4th century and he lived in a town which today is known as Demre in Turkey, but most of the stories we have about St. Nicholas were written centuries after his death and were probably heavily embellished. One story tells of him secretly throwing bags of gold through the window of a house to stop a destitute father from selling his daughters into prostitution. It's a pretty dark origin to our modern day gift-giving traditions. One of the darkest St. Nick stories tells of an evil innkeeper who captured 3 children, killed them, chopped them up into little pieces and pickled their remains in a barrel. St. Nicholas went to the inn and brought the pickled children back to life by making the sign of the cross over the barrel. But how did we get from this guy to the white-bearded fellow with the flying reindeers? A lot of this imagery seems to have its origins in pre-Christian traditions. In Norse mythology, Odin is often depicted one-eyed and white-bearded, riding around on an 8-legged flying horse named Sleipnir. Thor was also known to zip around in a chariot drawn by 2 flying goats. During midwinter solstice, the Vikings believed that the veil between our world and the spirit world thinned, and Odin would lead the wild hunt, a procession of spirits and mythological figures across the sky. Somewhere along the way it's possible that these flying beasts got combined with other legends, maybe that of the Sami people of Lapland, who believed that the sun was pulled across the sky by flying reindeer. But apart from Odin, the white-bearded figure associated with winter or autumn festivals crops up in many other cultures as well. The Roman god Saturn is associated with the midwinter festival of Saturnalia, which was a time of celebration and gift-giving. The Greek god Dionysus associated with the midwinter rural festival of Dionysia. There's also the Slavic frost demon Dead Moros, who brings gifts for children at wintertime. The Celtic god Luke and the autumn festival of Lunasa. Whilst these might not be directly connected to our modern day Santa, remember what I said about something buried in our collective unconscious. It's also interesting that the idea of Santa Claus and Father Christmas emerged fairly independently of each other. In England as far back as the 15th century there was a white-bearded Father Christmas who was the personification of the Christmas spirit. Meanwhile in the Netherlands the figure of Sinterklaas based on St. Nicholas was a popular folklore figure. Eventually the story of Sinterklaas reached America and there he became Santa Claus. Then from America Santa found his way to England. As Father Christmas and Santa Claus were so strangely familiar, these 2 figures eventually merged into one, but for a while they were thought of as 2 separate entities. I just thought this was worth noting because it shows how this image of the kindly old man with the white beard somehow seems to imprint itself on these festivals. We don't really know what Santa is meant to be, whether he's a man or something else. He might be some sort of ghost or fey entity. It's long been thought that chimneys in a house can act as an entranceway for witches and imps and other evil spirits. As late as the 19th century, people in England were hiding animal hearts and shoes in their chimneys to block these malevolent entities from entering their homes. The fact that Santa enters a house via the chimney might be a sign that he himself is one of these spirits or imps. It's also worth noting that in Italy, gifts are delivered in January by the Befana, a haggard-looking witch that rides her broomstick down people's chimneys. And so this rather long preamble is really just to set the scene for the following accounts, because some people claim to have actually seen Santa Claus in real life, and I think these stories take on a whole new level of intrigue when you consider the possibility that Santa might not just be a silly children's story, but something much more complex and mysterious. So let's look at some real life Santa encounters, shall we? On Reddit I found this post by person1031. It was early Christmas morning, between 2 AM and 4 AM, 1996 or 97. I was 6 or 7 years old. I always had trouble sleeping the night before Christmas because I couldn't wait until morning to open my presents, and because here in Australia, Christmas is during the summer, so the nights are always quite hot. Anyway, I got out of bed to peek at the presents under the Christmas tree. As I crept out of the hallway into the dining area, something in the kitchen doorway caught my attention. I got back behind the hallway entry and observed what appeared to be a pair of legs wearing long red pants. The legs were bolt upright, but the rest of the figure was apparently bent at the hips into the kitchen doorway, so I couldn't see the body. At this age, I still believed in Santa, so I went and woke my older sister, who begrudgingly came and took a look. We both peeked around the hallway entry and saw the same thing that I initially saw. The figure had not moved position since I first observed it a minute or two earlier. She tiredly suggested that it was just Dad and that I should go back to bed. I wasn't convinced and followed her back to her room as I didn't want to be alone. She no longer believed in Santa and became annoyed at me for hiding under her desk and begging her to come and have another look with me. I finally crept back to my room, closed the door leaving it slightly ajar, and proceeded to pace around my room, not knowing whether to wake my parents or have another look in the kitchen doorway. I finally decided to leave my room and wake my parents, and as I opened my door, standing there blocking my path was Santa Claus. He was dressed exactly how I'd imagined him. He looked like the typical Coca-Cola Santa, down to the white woolen trimmings, black belt with a golden buckle and red nightcap. He had small, circular, gold-rimmed glasses, a white curly beard, blue eyes, and liver spots on his cheeks. I froze and looked up at his eyes. He had what I took to be a stern expression on his face, almost glaring at me. Just after we made eye contact, he bent his head down towards me slightly in a manner that suggested, "What are you doing up? You shouldn't be awake. Go back to bed." I gasped, took a few steps back, and then jumped into bed. Turning my back to the door, I closed my eyes and then fell asleep despite my state of shock. I remember thinking at the time, Santa doesn't like kids being awake because he can't drop off the presents otherwise, so it was as if I knew that I should go back to sleep. In the morning, both my parents said that they didn't see me the night before. They both thought that I'd imagined it naturally. My sister kept telling me that it was Dad. Every few years I bring up the event with my family. My parents have denied wearing a Santa suit, and my sister still thinks it was our dad. Another post, LBD4Life, writes, I woke up to sounds on the roof like someone walking. I was on the second floor. I went out my room and down the hall to the balcony and stairs that lead down to the living room where the tree was set up. Right there on the couch, I saw a big, long-bearded man dressed up as Santa, sitting with his head in his hands and his elbows on his knees. It was like he was taking a small break. I quietly ran to my mom's room and woke her up to come and see, and of course, he was gone when I got back to look again. It was super real, and honestly for years and years I thought my mom had paid her sister's husband to come and trick me. That would be one hell of an elaborate trick to set up. But yeah, now that I'm grown up, I tell that story to everyone as if it was real. Probably just a vivid dream I held on to, but it's fun to tell the kids. Starry Lisa says, when I was around 4 years old, very late on Christmas Eve, I heard my bedroom door creak open. I opened my eyes and saw a man in a traditional Santa outfit looking at me. I gasped and he put his finger to his lips in a shushing gesture. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them, he was gone. And believe me when I say my father was definitely not the type of man to dress as Santa. I told my mother the next morning and she just gave me a really peculiar look. Liveabout.com has a bunch of Santa encounters compiled by Stephen Wagner. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to read them yourself. Most of them are quite interesting. Anna writes, I was 5 years old and I was in my room when I heard a shuffling in the living room. I got up and peered around the doorway where I saw a man in a Santa suit standing in front of the Christmas tree. He must have felt my presence because he turned around and looked at me. He didn't look jolly or kind and happy like you would expect Santa Claus to look. He looked kind of eerie, like he was staring into my soul. Automatically I ran into my parents' room and hid under the covers. I don't know why I was so scared at the time, but I wrote it off as a dream for a while before I forgot about it completely. Years later I remembered it. I thought it could have been a burglar, but when I asked my parents, nothing was ever missing from the apartment. The only time we were ever robbed was when we moved later on. The only explanation I have now is that it was some kind of apparition. Mrs. Wages writes, I grew up in the suburb of Memphis, Tennessee. In the 1980s, I was 8 or 9 years old. My parents and I were coming home from a Christmas party on Christmas Eve. When we pulled up in the driveway, we saw Santa Claus in a sleigh hovering above our house. All we could hear were the sleigh bells. The sleigh was illuminated so that we could see Santa in full outfit in the sleigh. I remember seeing the reindeer. I don't know how many there were. Santa waved at us and flew off in the sleigh. I'll never forget it, and I'll never forget my dad's face of total shock. He was an air traffic controller, and when he went back to work after the holidays, he asked about it and nothing came up. In another bizarre twist, on Black Friday in 2009, I was waiting in line at the local Target store and broke out into conversation with another lady in the line. We were talking about Christmas shopping, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, she mentioned that her brother had seen Santa Claus in his sleigh 2 years before. I stood with my mouth wide open because I couldn't believe it. Every Christmas Eve I still think about him, and I look outside to try and get a glimpse. Now obviously some of these stories could be dreams. A lot of these encounters do happen right before a child falls asleep or right after they wake up. That's not to say that they definitely are dreams, but it would give a skeptic an easy way to dismiss them. The stories with multiple witnesses from adults who are in situations where they definitely weren't asleep, those are a bit more difficult to debunk. Looking through multiple accounts, a few recurring themes emerge. One of the most common is hearing sleigh bells in the air, or the sound of laughter and footsteps on the roof of the house. Interestingly, in other situations, the sounds of bells ringing has been associated with the presence of spirits or fairies. Another common theme among the Santa sightings is seeing the sled pulled by reindeer flying across the sky. Many people describe seeing Santa flying in front of the moon, making that classic silhouette. This picture of Santa flying silhouetted in front of the moon, it's such a common image at Christmas. It's as if people are seeing what they've already been primed to see by thousands of Christmas cards and other holiday imagery. In fact, most of these Santa encounters describe him in a very stereotypical manner. The red and white outfits, the white beard, the jolly personality. It's interesting that they always see this Santa rather than other versions of him like the green-clad Saint Nick or the Pope hat-wearing Sinterklaas or Belschnickel. It suggests that their minds are projecting what they expect to see rather than observing something objectively. There's many theories about why this might be. Some people believe that Santa is a kind of tulpa or thought form made real by the collective belief of children. Other people believe that Santa Claus is a screen memory, a type of false memory that is created by the mind when it encounters something that it doesn't know how to deal with. This could be a traumatic event or some unknown phenomena that the mind can't quite comprehend. Alternatively, some people believe that Santa Claus is the physical manifestation of the spirit of the holiday season, a physical embodiment of the joy, generosity and goodwill that are associated with the winter holidays. We can't really say for certain what people have seen when they claim to have encountered Santa in real life. It seems that they've encountered something, we just don't know what that something is. So in conclusion, I think the evidence provided in this video irrefutably proves the existence of Santa Claus. The cultural and historical significance of Santa, as well as the countless anecdotes from people who have seen him in real life, leave no room for doubt. To all the naysayers and skeptics, I hope this video serves as a firm rebuke to your disbelief. Santa's real, okay? Merry Christmas everybody, thanks for watching the video, I hope you're having a good time, and a huge thanks to everyone who is supporting the channel, it's much appreciated. Until next time, goodbye.